article for today for Cuckold by Kiran Nagarkar is Anirudh Deshpande's paper. Just a second, Anirudh Deshpande's paper, Interpretive Possibilities of Historical Fiction, study of Kiran Nagarkar's Cuckold. Okay. Anirudh Deshpande utilizes Kiran Nagarkar's novel Cuckold not as a piece of romantic narrative but as a serious intellectual instrument for military and historical theory. কারণ ভালোবাসার পয়েন্টটা অনেকেই করেছে. Who will talk about the military and historical theory, right? So, the primary objective is to determine if a work of fiction can offer insights into the reasons behind the systematic failures of India's past military systems, specifically the Rajput ethos and the feudal military mentality of the early 16th century in Mewar. The paper essentially asks what the novel reveals about the history, mentality, and society that led to these failures. Okay? কেন ইন্ডিয়া বারবার হেরে যাচ্ছিল, especially Rajput. So, fiction and history, the theoretical frame. Anirudh Deshpande establishes that historical fiction, such as Cuckold, is more than simple storytelling. Right? It serves as a valid method for historical reconstruction. Historyটাকে reconstruct করায় কিন্তু literature. Function of fiction, it exists at the boundary of history and imagination. ধরো এটা history, এটা imagination, এইটা হচ্ছে fiction. Okay? Enabling the historian to capture the mentality, motivations, and psychology underpinning historical events, aspects that purely factual history often neglects. কেন এটা হলো হলো তো জানি, হিস্ট্রি বলছে হলো, ফিকশন বলবে কেন হলো. ঠিক আছে, রিভাইভিং দ্য পাস্ট. The author argues something is wrong with my glasses. Anirudh argues that at a time when academic history is in decline, compelling fiction can revitalize interest in the past by humanizing the material. Novelist scope, Cuckold is therefore understood not as a record of historical dates and battles, but as a deep exploration of the thought processes, beliefs, and the ultimate failures of people in medieval India. Cuckold is therefore understood not as a record of historical dates and battles, but as a deep exploration of thought processes, beliefs, and ultimate failures of people in medieval India. Okay. সেটিংটা 1600 খ্রিস্টাব্দ বলছি, 16th century Mewar. The novel is set in Mewar, the jewel of Rajputana বলা হতো মেওয়ারকে, during the early 1500s, covering the period immediately preceding and including the catastrophic Battle of Khanwa 1527 under Rana Sanga. Maharaj Kumar as a reformer. The narrator Maharaj Kumar Bhojraj, called Bhojraj, the real name is Bhojraj. We call him, the novel calls him Maharaj Kumar, is presented as a sophisticated military and political thinker and imagined reformer operating ahead of his time. Deshpande notes that since very little is known historically about Bhojraj, Nagarkar, age historical recovery, was free to craft him as a character who could effectively critique his own society. If you all don't know about historical recovery, go to my last video, see that and come back here, okay? So the narrator Bhojraj is presented as a sophisticated military and political thinker and imagined reformer operating ahead of his time. Deshpande notes that since very little is known historically about Bhojraj, Nagarkar was free to craft him as a character who could effectively critique his own society. যেহেতু ওর ব্যাপারে বেশি লেখা নেই, তো হিস্টোরিক্যাল রিকভারি করে ওকেই ক্রিটিক করালো. ঠিক আছে. Internal conflict. Bhojraj's political nature is conceived as a direct intellectual counter to the milieu of feudal India, facing both the potential for reform and the systematic difficulties inherent in that society. His mental landscape becomes the site of a conflict between modern rationality and ancient fatalism. We don't need to describe it much more because I've already taught this in the last video. Go back to it, come back here, that's why. So, Bhojraj's political nature is conceived as a direct intellectual counter to the milieu of feudal India, facing both the potential for reform and the systematic limitations, difficulties inherent in that society. His mental landscape becomes the site of a conflict between modern rationality and ancient fatalism. Novel addition. This conflict is magnified by the fierce internal power struggle where his political vision is rejected in favor of his half brother Vikramaditya, whose plotting mother Rani Karmavati represents the very feudal stagnation Bhojraj seeks to overcome. This conflict kotha magnified hocche by the fierce internal power struggle where his political vision is rejected in favor for his half brother, younger brother Vikramaditya, whose plotting mother Rani Karmavati represents a very feudal stagnation Bhojraj seeks to overcome. So basically, old archaic society versus reformist ideas, right? Number 3, military mentality of feudal India, Kirom Chilo. The paper analyzes the psychological framework of the Rajputs who were a martial race, right? Marpit bhalo parto. Prioritizing personal honor and individual bravery over tactical adaptability or strategic organization. Strategic ara follow kora amra to jai mari chole ashi. Ei idea ta. So the paper analyzes the psychological framework of the Rajputs who were the martial race, prioritizing personal honor and individual bravery over tactical adaptability or strategic organization. Clausewitsian principle. Deshpande invokes Clausewitz's theory that war is a human activity inseparable from the influence of social mentality. That war is a human activity inseparable from the influence of social mentality. War দেখায় সেই লোকেদের মেন্টালিটিটা কিরম. Diagnosis of defeat. India's repeated military losses spanning from Porus to Ibrahim Lodi is dramatized through Maharaj Kumar's consistent frustration. ঠিক আছে, to Ibrahim Lodi to Rana Sanga. Spanning from Porus to Ibrahim Lodi to Rana Sanga were not caused by a lack of courage. Courage to bhar bhar ke tha, but by frozen mental patterns. This is dramatized through Maharaj Kumar's consistent frustration. From Porus to Ibrahim Lodi to Rana Sanga were not caused by a lack of courage, but frozen mental patterns. This is dramatized through Maharaj Kumar's consistent frustration. Right. Systematic failures. These static mental patterns led to technical defeat. AJ war reflects Clausewitz's idea, inseparable from the influence of social mentality, right? Social mentality এইটাই দেখাচ্ছে, ঠিক আছে, যে মেন্টাল প্যাটার্নের জন্য তোমরা টেকনিক্যাল ইস্যু করে ফেলে ওয়ার হেরে যাচ্ছ, ইনক্লুডিং অ্যাবসেন্স অফ কোঅর্ডিনেশন among the infantry, cavalry and elephants. কোনো কোঅর্ডিনেশন নেই. No established strategy for retreat or organized regrouping. A social mentality that valued a heroic death more than an intelligent survival. এই যে আগের আর্টিকেলটা কি বললাম আমরা, জওহর, সাকা and ethos for mard ko dard nahi hota. If you want to know more about it, go to my last video, right? Systematic failure. These static mental patterns lead to technical defects, including absence of coordination among infantry, cavalry and elephants, excessive reliance on superstition, fate, astrology and battlefield rituals. I love fate, I love astrology, I don't like superstition, and I really like rituals. So I'm against this actually. I am for superstition. That superstition excessive bhore gechilo. Excessive reliance on superstition, fate, astrology and battlefield rituals. No established strategy for retreat or strategized organized regrouping. A social mentality that valued heroic death over intelligent survival. তো মরতে তো হবেই, হারতে তো হবেই. This is so frustrating. মরে যাওয়া ঠিক আছে, বাঁচা ঠিক নেই. Oh my god. Courage versus strategy. The fatal pattern. Deshpande draws a major comparative conclusion. While India's warriors demonstrated high individual courage, their execution of war suffered from collective strategic failure और stupidity. इंडिविजुअल करेज भर भर के है लेकिन मेंटल पैटर्न फ्रोज होके भरती पड़ा है, क्लॉग हो गया है, ठीक है. They are not following strategy, no organizational skills, no communication only. Okay, no coordination only. They are stupid. Okay. While India's warriors demonstrated high individual courage, their execution of war suffered from collective strategic failure or stupidity. Historical example, Gemini. Porus against Alexander Pechi, 326 BCE. Ibrahim against Babur Pechi. Porus ke harache Alexander. Ibrahim Lodi ke harache Babur. And Rana Sanga ke harache Babur again. And Sadashiv Rao against Abdali. Ishabete elephant problem. ঠিক আছে, the classical Hindu battle formation follow করতো, which relied heavily on elephants, which though intimidating were uncontrollable once the mahout jo upore bosche was skilled, leading to immediate panic and chaos of the elephant, right? Elephant problem ta the big problem. The classical Hindu war, Hindu battle formation relied heavily on elephants, which though intimidating was uncontrollable once the mahout was killed, leading to immediate panic and chaos. Caste segregation. The paper suggests that caste-based segregation contributed to the lack of army cohesion, hypothesizing that the Kshatriya Raja may not have fully trusted the heterogeneous mass of the infantry, resulting in the infantry being poorly trained and deployed. This made feudal armies large but ultimately fragile and lacking in esprit de corps. Okay, বলছে যে কোঅর্ডিনেশন ল্যাক কেন করবে না, তখনকার দিনের রাজা মহারাজারা বা তার নিচের সেনারা মানে মিনিস্টার্সরা যারা অ্যাকচুয়াল ট্রেন করছে, দে বিলিভড ইন কাস্ট সিস্টেম, রাইট? তো ইনফেন্ট্রি ওয়ার মেড উইথ দ্য লোয়ার কাস্ট পিপল, কমিউনিকেট করতো না প্রপারলি, ট্রেন করতো না, আলটিমেটলি সাফার করতো। তো ওই জন্য ফিউডাল আর্মি যতই বড় হোক আলটিমেটলি ফ্রেজাইল, ভেঙে যেত। দ্য গুজরাট ক্যাম্পেন লেসেন্স ইগনোর্ড, লার্নডের জায়গায় ইগনোর করলো। দ্য পেপার হাইলাইটস দ্য নভেলস ফিকশনালাইজড অ্যাকাউন্ট অফ মেওয়াড়স ওয়ার এগেনস্ট গুজরাট as a brilliant dramatization of an alternative military path, যেটা মহারাজ কুমার কিন্তু দেখা যায় যে এইভাবেও যুদ্ধ জেতা যায়। ভোজরাজ কি ইনোভেট করলো? ভোজরাজ attempts military modernization by forming an alliance with the Bhils tribal forest fighters led by Puraji Kika. ঠিক আছে, এই যে লোয়ার কাস্ট যাদেরকে ওরা এত ঘেন্না করতো, ও তাদের সঙ্গে টিম আপ করে কিন্তু জিতলো ওয়ারটা। Fictionalized war again. So Bhojraj attempts military modernization by forming an alliance with the Bhils tribal forest fighters led by Puraji Kika. Mobile warfare. He learns and applies mobile warfare, tuck warfare techniques, including ambush, feints, camouflage, and coordinated guerrilla style movement. Kichu movement. Trapping the Gujarati army in a marsh and utilizing terrain intelligently. তুমি যেখানে আছো সেটা ইউজ করছে। Rejection of reform. This demonstration of a modern, flexible, intercaste and practical military modernity is tragically dismissed by his own court. Rana Sanga's vanity, persistent caste prejudice, and court intrigue destroy any possibility of systematic military reform. Deshpande frames this as a central tragedy of India's past, where reformers like Bhojraj are continuously undone by their own tradition. এই পার্টটা ভীষণ ভীষণ ভাবে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। দ্য গুজরাট ক্যাম্পেন, এখানে মানে ও করে দেখাচ্ছে কিভাবে করা উচিত, বাট তাও ডিসমিস হয়ে যাচ্ছে, রাইট? Bhojraj, okay. Bhojraj's innovation. Bhojraj attempts military modernization by forming an alliance with the Bhils, the forest fighters, okay, the tribal forest fighters led by Puraji Kika. Remember the name Puraji Kika. Kiki Shiklo mobile warfare. He learns and applies mobile warfare techniques like ambush, feints, camouflage, guerrilla style techniques, coordinated guerrilla style movement, trapping the Gujarati army in a marsh and utilizing terrain intelligently. This demonstration of a modern, flexible, intercaste and practical military movement is tragically dismissed by his own court. Rana Sanga's vanity, persistent caste prejudice, and court intrigue destroy any possibility possibility of systematic military reform, মানে রিফর্ম হওয়া তো দূর, ওকে অ্যাকনোলেজটুকুও করেনি, দেশ উল্টে ক্রিটিসাইজ করেছে। দেশপান্ডে frames this as a central tragedy of India's past, where reformers like Bhojraj are continuously undone by their own traditions. Point number 6. The Institute of Advanced Military Tactics. Deshpande emphasizes another key fictional episode. এগুলো কিন্তু ফিকশনই, ঠিক আছে? গুজরাট ক্যাম্পেন বল। Bhojraj's proposal at an imaginary military institute in Chittor. Bhojraj's proposal at an imaginary military institute in Chittor. Proposed reform, Bhojraj কি বললো? Bhojraj suggests expanding training beyond ritual and astrology to include study of military techniques used by Arabs, Turks and Portuguese, adoption of নতুন টেকনোলজি। কিরকম নতুন টেকনোলজি? পর্তুগিজদের থেকে ধর সুপিরিয়র নেভাল টেকনোলজি শিখলো, নেভাল টেকনোলজি ছিল, আর যেন কি আনলো, ওইদিকে বাবার আনলো হচ্ছে আর্টিলারি আনলো, ট্যাকটিক্যাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স আনলো, এক সেকেন্ড, পর্তুগিজ আর যেন কি আনলো, firearms, correct, we can't forget firearms. ওকে, প্রপোজ করলো ও কি প্রপোজ করলো যে এবারে অস্ত্র মানে শাস্ত্র ছেড়ে একটু অস্ত্র এসো, study of military techniques used by the Arabs, Turks and Portuguese, adoption of new technologies, the scientific study of the art of retreat, arguing that by studying this art one can ensure survival and live to fight another war. Mindless slaughter করলে তো মরে যাবে, আরেকটা যুদ্ধ কি করে লড়বে? রিজেক্ট করে দেওয়া হলো as cowardice. The Rajputs firmly rejected these ideas, equating the concept of retreat with cowardice. Right. So, rejection as cowardice. The Rajputs firmly reject these ideas, equating the concept of retreating with cowardice. Deshpande connects this to the success of Babur, who understood and utilized tactics like strategic retreat and grouping. The stark contrast, I tell you, যেটা ভোজরাজ বলে কাওয়ার্ড বলা হলো, ওকে, সেমটা বাবর বলে কিন্তু জিতে গেল, সেই রানা সাঙ্গাকে কিন্তু এইরকম করে হারালো। মানে লিটারালি তোমরা ভাবতে পারছো, বাবর কেম উইথ 20,000 লোক অনলি, আর ওইদিকে the Rajputs brought like lakhs of people, কিন্তু বাবর ঢুকলো কি নিয়ে? গান পাউডার অ্যান্ড আর্টিলারি। ভোজরাজ আগেই বলেছিল দ্যাট লেটস ডু সামথিং মডার্ন, লেটস ডু ইট, না কাওয়ার্ড বললো, ওকে নে মর এবার। So Bhojraj suggests expanding training beyond ritual and astrology to include study of military techniques used by Arabs, Turks and Portuguese, adoption of new technologies, the scientific study of the art of retreat, arguing that by studying this art one can ensure survival and live to fight another war. Rejection as cowardice. The Rajputs firmly reject these ideas, equating the concept of retreat with cowardice. Deshpande connects this to the success of Babur, who understood and utilized tactics like strategic retreat and regrouping. তাহলে এই গুজরাট ক্যাম্পেন আর বেচারা যে সাজেস্ট করেছিল ইম্পর্টেন্ট। Caste and feudal narrowness. The analysis considers the role of social structure in preventing military modernization, citing the rigidity of the caste system. Stephen Rosener একটা argument পড়ি আপনাদের। Deshpande refers to historian Stephen Rosen's argument that the caste hierarchy prevented essential cooperation between the pure Rajput elites and impure low caste soldiers, ensuring the infantry remained untrusted and untrained. কোনো ইনফরমেশনই বলতো না, বিশ্বাসই করতো না, বেসিক কোঅপারেশন যেটা দরকার সেটাই নেই, ট্রেনিং ঠিক করে করতো না, দিত না। Mental stagnation. This structural rigidity created a frog in the well mentality, which combined with feudalism resulted in technological stagnation. Pati kotha. Al-Biruni's observation. Anirudh also cites Al-Biruni's 11th century observations that the Hindus of that era refused to learn from outsiders due to a combination of arrogance, are amra sob jani amra mohot, and fear of impurity. Amra অশুদ্ধ হয়ে যাব। এই যে যখন ভোজরাজ এসে বলল যে আমরা কিন্তু মানে মিলিটারি টেকনিক ইউজ করতে পারি, যেমনি আরবরা ইউজ করছে, টার্করা ইউজ করছে, পর্তুগিজরা ইউজ করছে, বলে এই বাবা চিচি চিচি আমরা সব জানি, আমরা অশুদ্ধ হয়ে যাবো, ও মাই গড। সো স্টিফেন রোজেনের আর্গুমেন্ট পড়লাম, আলবিরুনির অবজারভেশন পড়লাম। বেসিক কোঅপারেশন আটকে দেয়, স্টিফেন রোজেন বলছে বিটুইন পিয়ার রাজপুত এলিটস অ্যান্ড ইম্পিয়ার লোকাস সোলজার্স, তারপরে মেন্টাল স্ট্যাগনেশন, ফ্রগ ইন দ্য বেল মেন্টালিটি অ্যান্ড আলবিরুনি, দ্য বাবর মডেল versus Rajput stasis. Okay, Deshpande provides a detailed comparison of the two opposing military systems at the Battle of Khanwa. বাবরের রেভলিউশন, ঠিক আছে, রুমি সিস্টেম ফলো করলো। বাবর, who learned from the Ottoman Turks, introduced a revolutionary system of warfare. His success was high due to the integration of artillery and matchlocks, defensive barricades made of cards tied with leather ropes, planned gaps in the defenses for swift cavalry charges, the Tulugma maneuver, a flanking cavalry, and love envelopment, strict communication and discipline. আর এদিকে রাজপুত স্ট্যাটাস, the Rajput countered with elephants and reliance on astrology. ভাই অ্যাস্ট্রোলজিকে আমি খারাপ বলছি না, প্লিজ, আই প্র্যাকটিস ইট মাই সেলফ, বাট Nagarkar's fictional Maharaj Kumar suggests modern strategies such as placing Rana Sanga on a higher observation tower safely out of cannon range, but these suggestions are mocked and ignored by the traditionalist court. যে এ বাবা যুদ্ধে কেন নামছে না, কেন নামলো না, তাইলে আর কিসের রাজা, রাজা নিজে তাই বললো। কনক্লুশনে কি দাঁড়ালো? বাবর, despite being feudal, was systematically modern due to his integration of technology and organization, while Rana Sanga possessed only manpower and honor, demonstrating India's repeated inability to learn from its defeat. This is funny at this point of time. মানে অবনীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর অ্যান্ড বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় যেভাবে আইডিয়ালাইজ করেছে, দ্যাট ইজ রিয়েলি ফানি। কারণ খালি হিরোইজম, মাচোইজম থাকলে হবে না, ইউ হ্যাভ টু লার্ন ফ্রম ইউর ডিফিটস, অ্যান্ড না শিখলে এই অবস্থায় হবে যেটা হয়েছে। Babur, despite being feudal, was systematically modern due to his integration of technology and organization, while Rana Sanga possessed only manpower and honor, demonstrating India's repeated inability to learn from its defeat. Broader historical comparison, এটা তেমন লাগবে না। Their ideas of Kesari Bana, donning the saffron shroud, and Johar, mass self-immolation, are seen as wasteful symbolic exercises. মানে এগুলো তো মানে আটকানো যেত, তাই না? তো না আটকিয়ে এইসব করা is like ভাঁওতাবাজি, according to Anirudh Deshpande. Their ideas of Kesari Bana, that Gerua leke marenge basically, and Johar are seen as wasteful. Even the Marathas, though brave, eventually lost battles like Panipat 1761, Asai 1803, due to their over-reliance on cavalry, personal combat, blah blah blah. Okay, so what makes Cuckold special? In the conclusion, Deshpande praises Nagarkar's achievement. Unique historical imagination দিয়েছে. The novel successfully imagines the psychology of a prince attempting to modernize his kingdom against insurmountable traditional resistance. Humanizing critique. It humanizes military history. It humanizes military history through the emotional failures and deep frustration of the narrator, and fundamentally asks why India kept failing despite possessing brave heroes. মানে রানা সাঙ্গা, ওদিকে ছাওয়া, এরা থাকতেও আমরা কেন হেরে গেলাম? দিস ইজ আ ভেরি পার্সোনাল ওপিনিয়ন। ছাওয়াতে যখন লাস্টে লড়তে নামছে, হি নোজ হিল ডাই। Why does he need to fight? Because mard ko dard nahi hota, because mindless slaughter. I mean, retreat so that you will live to fight another war, as said by Maharaj Kumar, right? So it humanizes military history through the emotional failures and deep frustration of the narrator, and fundamentally asks why India kept failing despite possessing brave heroes. Novels like Cuckold are considered invaluable for altering popular perceptions of history, treating war as a window to state formations, and demonstrating that the causes of defeat are often found not on the battlefield but within the stagnant social and political mind. Khub important. That causes of defeat are often not found on the battlefield but in the social and political mind, but within the stagnant social and political mind. Thus, Cuckold is both a work of fiction and a sharp historical critique. We are done.